From the moment Amina lost her mother, the walls of her world seemed to close in on her. She was only 18, fragile, hopeful, still carrying the softness of a girl who dreamed of becoming a nurse. But fate had other plans. Her mother's sudden death left her under the guardianship of a man she barely knew. Her stepfather, Richard. Richard was not cruel, at least not in the obvious way. He provided food, clothing, even enrolled her in college. But beneath his calm presence, there was an unsettling weight in the air, something she couldn't name, yet couldn't ignore. The house where Amina now lived was far larger than her old home. Marble floors, grand staircases, and cold silence. It was beautiful but lonely. Her mother's laughter, once filling every corner of her life, had been replaced by the ticking of clocks and the heavy echo of her own footsteps. Richard moved through the home like a shadow. He spoke little, but when he did, Amina felt his voice ripple through her chest. "Dinner is ready. Study hard. Lock your door." Simple words, but each carried a weight she couldn't understand. At first, she was grateful. He was doing his duty, caring for his late wife's daughter. But slowly, she began to notice things. His eyes lingering longer than they should. The way his hand brushed her shoulder when it didn't need to. College was her escape. Among classmates, she laughed, studied, pretended everything was normal. But even there, her background made her different. Many students came from wealthy families. They judged her simple clothes, whispered about her new rich father. She often sat alone in the cafeteria, staring at couples who giggled and shared fries. She longed for affection, for someone to make her feel alive again. But she guarded herself, telling no one about the strange tension at home. One evening, walking back from college, she noticed Richard waiting outside in his sleek black car. "Get in," he said. She obeyed nervously. Inside, the car smelled of leather and cologne. She tried to look away, but she felt his eyes studying her every movement. "You shouldn't walk alone at night," he said, voice low. "It's dangerous." Amina nodded. "Thank you." And yet, as she glanced at his hands gripping the wheel, a confusing thought stirred. Why did his presence feel both safe and dangerous? That night, unable to sleep, Amina wandered into the living room. The lights were dim, the curtains swaying from a breeze. Richard was there, sitting on the couch with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His shirt unbuttoned at the top, his posture relaxed. He looked up when he saw her. "Couldn't sleep." She shook her head. Her nightdress, pale pink and soft, brushed against her knees as she hugged herself. "Come sit," he said, gesturing to the seat beside him. Amina hesitated, then slowly walked over, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. She sat, careful to keep distance, but the scent of his cologne surrounded her. He handed her a glass of water, their fingers brushing. She flinched at the contact. "You remind me of your mother," he said suddenly, his voice softer than she had ever heard. Her smile, her eyes, her heart pounded. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to honor her mother's memory, but the way Richard's eyes locked onto hers made her shiver. It wasn't a fatherly gaze. It was something else, something forbidden. Over the next weeks, small incidents deepened her confusion. Richard's hand lingering on her back as he guided her through a doorway. His compliments. "You're growing into a beautiful woman." His silence when she caught him watching her from across the room. Amina tried to bury her feelings. She told herself it was wrong. He was her stepfather. But her body betrayed her. Her cheeks burned. Her heart raced. Her dreams filled with shadows she dared not speak of. One afternoon, after classes, she returned home to find him in the garden, sleeves rolled, sweat glistening on his skin as he fixed a broken fence. She froze at the sight, unable to tear her eyes away. He noticed her, smirked slightly, and said, "Like what you see." Her face flushed crimson. I wasn't. But he only chuckled, the sound deep and unsettling. The moment everything shifted came one stormy night. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. Amina lay awake, her body trembling, not from fear of the storm, but from the restless emotions boiling inside her. Then a knock. Soft, steady. She opened the door to find Richard standing there, his shirt damp from the rain, his eyes darker than ever. held something dangerous. "Are you afraid?" he asked. She nodded, though it was a lie. Without waiting, he stepped inside. The room suddenly felt too small, the air thick. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe," he whispered. Her breath caught. The warmth of his touch lingered like fire on her skin. She knew she should step back, push him away, scream. But she didn't. Something in her wanted this closeness, this attention. And in that silence, with the storm raging outside, Amina felt her innocence teeter on the edge of a cliff. The night the storm broke into her room was the night the boundaries shattered. The thunder outside roared like a warning from the heavens, but inside Amina's room, silence pressed between them. Richard's fingers lingered against her cheek, his touch burning into her skin. "Go back to bed," he whispered, but he didn't move away. His eyes locked on hers, and in that moment, Amina couldn't tell if he was testing her or himself. Her lips parted, trembling. She wanted to speak, to stop this before it became something neither of them could undo. But when she opened her mouth, no words came, only the sharp rhythm of her breath. Richard's hand slid down, brushing against her arm. "You've grown into a woman, Amina," he said quietly, almost like an admission. "And I'm only human." Her heart pounded so loudly, she was sure he could hear it. She should have run. She should have shouted. Instead, she stood frozen, her innocence trembling under the weight of his gaze. And then it happened. His lips pressed against hers, slow at first, as if waiting for her to push him away. She didn't. Her body betrayed her. She let him kiss her, and when his arm wrapped around her waist, she melted into him. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a different storm consumed them both. When Amina opened her eyes the next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. The storm was gone, but its mark remained, on her lips, on her body, in her soul. She sat up, clutching the blanket around herself, shame burning her cheeks. Richard was gone. Only the faint smell of his cologne lingered in the air. She stumbled into the bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her hair was messy, her lips swollen. She didn't look like the same girl. She looked older, different. Tears filled her eyes. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. Yet beneath the shame, another feeling stirred, curiosity, desire, a dangerous hunger she didn't want to admit. Richard avoided her that morning. He sat at the dining table with his newspaper, his shirt crisp, his face unreadable. When she entered, he barely looked up. "Breakfast is on the counter," he said flatly. Amina's hands trembled as she poured tea. She wanted to speak, to ask what last night meant, but his coldness stopped her. Finally, she dared to whisper, "About last night." His eyes flicked to hers, sharp. It was a mistake. Forget it ever happened. Her chest tightened. A mistake. That's what he called it. But how could she forget something that had changed her so completely? Days passed, but the tension only grew. Richard avoided her gaze, but sometimes, late at night, she caught him watching her, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark with the same hunger she felt. Amina tried to distract herself at college, but her mind always wandered back. She began noticing men in a new way. The curve of a smile, the strength in a hand, but none of them compared to him. One evening, while studying in the library, her phone buzzed. A text from Richard, dinner at 8. We're something nice. Her heart skipped. She told herself it was just a meal, nothing more. But when she opened her wardrobe, her hands instinctively reached for a soft, white dress that hugged her figure more than her usual clothes. At dinner, Richard's silence was different this time, charged heavy. His eyes lingered on her neckline, on the curve of her lips. They didn't speak much, but the way his hand brushed hers as he poured her wine said everything. That night, she didn't resist when he knocked on her door again. She didn't tell him to leave when he sat on her bed. And when his lips found hers, she didn't pull away. This time, it wasn't tentative. It was desperate, hungry, as though both had been starving and finally gave in. "Amina," he whispered against her skin, his breath hot. "We shouldn't." But neither stopped. The innocence she once clung to shattered completely. What began as a mistake became a secret they both guarded, a dangerous, forbidden affair under the same roof. By day, They lived as though nothing had changed. Richard remained the strict, stoic guardian. Amina, the quiet college student. But at night, behind locked doors, they became something else. Two people bound by desire they couldn't resist. Yet the weight of secrecy grew heavy. Amina stopped laughing with friends. Her studies suffered. She jumped whenever someone mentioned her stepfather. One afternoon, her best friend, Zara, noticed her distraction. "You've been so distant lately," Zara said, frowning. "Is something going on at home?" Amina forced a smile. "No, nothing. I'm just tired." But deep down, she feared someone would discover the truth. What would people say? What would happen to her reputation? And worst of all, what would happen if Richard decided she was just a passing phase? The breaking point came when Richard brought another woman home. Amina watched from the staircase as a glamorous woman in a red dress laughed at his jokes, her hand brushing his arm. Jealousy burned through Amina like fire. She clenched the railing, her heart pounding. That night, when Richard entered her room, she couldn't hold back. "Who is she?" she demanded, her voice shaking. He frowned. "She's just a colleague." Do you love her?" His eyes softened, but his words were sharp. "Don't ask questions you can't handle the answers to." Tears stung her eyes. She realized then that she wasn't just in a forbidden affair. She was in a battle for his attention, his affection. And in that battle, her innocence was long gone. But Amina didn't know that this dangerous entanglement was only the beginning. The affair that had destroyed her innocence would soon spiral into something darker: jealousy, betrayal, and consequences that neither of them could escape. The more Amina tried to bury the truth, the deeper it consumed her. Each night Richard came into her room, and each morning she woke with a knot of guilt twisting in her stomach. She could no longer look her mother's picture on the wall without feeling the shame of betrayal. But the fire of desire refused to die. Even when she told herself this will be the last time, the next evening proved her wrong. What had begun as one reckless kiss had now become an addiction. College was no escape. Her friends noticed a change in her. Her late arrivals, the distracted way she stared out the window, the sudden flashes of temper. Zara, her best friend, pressed harder. "You're hiding something from me, Amina," she said one afternoon, blocking her path. "I'm not," Amina replied too quickly, her voice cracking. But whispers had already started. Someone claimed they'd seen her riding in Richard's expensive car late at night. Another said she was spending money she never had before. "She's got a sugar daddy." One girl sneered behind her back. The word stung, because in some twisted way, they weren't wrong. Richard noticed the rumors too, and his response chilled her. "You will not speak of us to anyone," he warned one evening, his voice sharp as a knife. "If anyone suspects, your life will be ruined. Do you understand me?" Amina nodded, tears in her eyes. But inside, fear began to grow. Richard wasn't just her secret lover anymore. He was becoming her captor. And the more she gave in to him, the more she lost pieces of herself. The woman in the red dress returned, this time for dinner. Amina watched Richard pour her wine, laugh at her jokes, touch her hand without shame. Something inside Amina snapped. When Richard came to her room later, she shoved him away. "Why do you do this?" she demanded. "You use me at night, then act like I'm invisible in the day. Am I just a game to you?" His jaw tightened. "You're young. You don't understand how the world works." "I understand enough," she spat, tears burning her eyes. "You're playing me." The slap came so fast she barely saw it, his hand against her cheek, the sting shocking her into silence. Richard froze, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Amina, I didn't mean." But she pushed him away. "Get out." That night, for the first time, she locked her door. Days turned to weeks. Amina avoided him, but her heart wavered between hate and longing. She buried herself in studies, but the weight of the secret grew unbearable. She couldn't confess to anyone, not even Zara. The shame was too heavy. One evening, she stood before her mother's picture again. "Would you hate me?" she whispered. "Would you forgive me?" Her tears fell freely, but no answer came. Only the silence of the house, where her secret sins hid in the walls. Then everything collapsed. Amina arrived at college one morning to find students huddled around phones, whispering. Zara rushed to her, pale. "Amina, have you seen this?" On the screen was a blurry photo, Richard leaving a hotel, and beside him her. The caption screamed, "Businessman caught with mystery young woman half his age." Her heart stopped. Her secret wasn't a secret anymore. By evening, the story was everywhere. Neighbors whispered. Professors gave her long, judging stares. Friends avoided her. At home, Richard's fury was terrifying. "You've ruined everything," he shouted, slamming his fist against the wall. "Do you know what you've done to my reputation?" "I didn't leak it," she cried, trembling. But he didn't believe her. For the first time, she realized she was nothing more than a stain on his perfect image. Days later, the glamorous woman in red appeared again. This time, not as a guest, but as Richard's fiancée. The announcement spread like wildfire. Richard was engaged, and Amina was nothing. Her chest burned as she watched him smile for the cameras, his arm around another woman. The man who had stolen her innocence now acted like she never existed. That night, she collapsed onto her bed, sobbing until her body ached. She was left with nothing but shame, betrayal, and memories she could never erase. Months later, Amina was no longer the same girl. She had cut ties with Richard, moved away, and tried to rebuild her life. But the scars remained. Every laugh, every glance, every whispered word from others reminded her of the affair that destroyed her innocence forever. She carried the lesson like a wound carved into her soul. Forbidden love never ends in happiness. It only takes, consumes, and leaves you hollow. Her story wasn't just about love. It was about the hunger that blinds, the desire that destroys, and the secret that shatters lives. And though she walked forward into her future, she knew one truth. She would never escape the night she first kissed her stepfather.